Well, a double dose of our book club today. Our next guest has published 2 Civil War era novels, wonderful stories of romance, action, and history. The first is titled Master of the East Fork. The sequel came out late last year. It is called Rebel Rousers. We are excited to welcome Carroll C. Jones to the show. Carroll, welcome to Daytime.
Well, thanks, Amy.
Yeah.
Appreciate your having me.
Good to have you here. Made the trip over from Morristown, you said.
Drove up this morning.
And you said you've been writing about 10 years now.
About 10 years. Prior to that, I had a engineering career for about 35 years, writing detailed things, and I guess I picked up my literary pen and began writing seriously about 10 years ago.
And first of all, writing nonfiction.
Nonfiction started out with more family, local history stuff, and that quickly evolved into the research and writing of regimental Civil War history.
Okay.
And that was about a 3-year project, which led to the production of my first book, The 25th North Carolina Troops in the Civil War.
And set back in western North Carolina, which is where you lived for several years.
Right. The Master of the East Fork is set in Haywood County, western North Carolina, and also the sequel to it too, Rebel Rousers, which is set about 15 years later during the Civil War.
So this one has to do with a young boy, and in this book, that boy has a son, and it one's kind of centered around him.
Yeah, the main character in the first one, Basil Edmiston, has grown up. He's matured 15 years, and his son is Rufus. And Rufus and his best friend go off to the Civil War, and these are my 2 rebel rousers.
Okay.
And they just find all kinds of way to get in trouble, and they take on the Yanks and eventually fight for their lives just to survive.
And Basil, in your first book, I understand too, he was sort of taking over that family farm, which a lot of young men had to do during that period.
Yeah, actually, it was very interesting. Basil, the idea of Basil came from one of my non-historical works called Captain Lenore's Diary. I learned how Thomas Isaac Lenore came to the mountains in the 1840s. His father just up and pulled him out of the State University, sent him into the dark, lonely mountains of Haywood County, and had him start managing the farm. So all of a sudden, young Basil had to oversee the slaves, manage the tenant farmers, and of all things, in the book, Master of the East Fork, I have him falling in love with 2 beautiful local girls at the same time.
Carrol.
And that was easy to invent, too.
Yeah. And then, of course, this one just released late last year. You said back in November.
Back in November, right. And it's primarily, there's a lot of Civil War history in here, and it follows a specific company that came out of the area, western North Carolina, and I followed that company through the entire Civil War. And Rufus Edmiston, Basil's son, is fighting with that company, you know, in major conflicts all over the eastern seaboard.
It definitely sounds like some interesting reads. Carroll, thank you so much for coming on the show. Want to let everybody know you can find his books, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, also Jan Carroll Publishing.
Correct.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you, Amy. I appreciate it.
Come back and see us again, okay?
I will. Thanks.
We're going to take a break. We're back with more of Daytime right after this.